kill my family.
Yeah, you did. We're gonna do this all night, man.
You spent those hours concocting some silly story. The jury's gonna see right through.
You did this. There's no doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. Afraid it is. Okay. Well, you know what? You're under arrest.
Okay. 4 counts of first-degree murder.
Sit down.
Sit down.
This is 15-year-old Nick Browning, and what he did before this interview will truly shock you. Because how could someone go from having the best life, a 3.8 GPA, varsity lacrosse and golf, 35 Boy Scout merit badges, and real talent in music, to becoming a teenager who would soon be facing years behind bars?
I think that you killed your family. And the thing is, the more you lie, the deeper it gets.
The Brownings seem to have everything figured out. In the pristine suburbs of Cockeysville, Maryland, a community where the median home price exceeded $500,000 and the schools ranked among the state's best, they stood out as a model family. John W. Browning, 45 years old, worked as a successful real estate lawyer at a prominent Baltimore firm. His career trajectory had been nothing short of impressive. After graduating from the University of Maryland Law School in 1986, John built a reputation as a meticulous attorney who never lost sight of details. Colleagues described him as driven, precise, and uncompromising in his pursuit of excellence. Tamara Browning, 44, had chosen a different path. After earning her degree in elementary education from Towson University, she worked briefly as a teacher before becoming a full-time homemaker. When Nicholas was born, friends from her book club remembered her as warm, intelligent, and devoted to her children's success. She volunteered at the school library every Tuesday and Thursday, organized bake sales for the PTA, and never missed a single game, recital, or school play. Her chocolate chip cookies were legendary at church potlucks, and she had a gift for making every child who visited their home feel special. Nicholas Wayne Browning arrived on February 9, 1992, during a fierce winter storm that shut down Baltimore for 3 days. John loved telling the story of how he'd nearly crashed the car twice driving Tamara to the hospital, but nothing was going to stop him from being there for his firstborn's arrival. From the beginning, Nick was everything they'd hoped for: bright, athletic, charming. By age 3, he was reading simple books. By 5, he could name every president in order. John saw unlimited potential in his eldest son and cultivated it relentlessly. Gregory Browning came along 3 years later, on July 15, 1995. Where Nick was intense and driven, Gregory was laid back and social. At 14, he played JV football for Delaney High School and had recently started dating a girl from his algebra class. His teachers described him as the class clown who somehow still managed B's and A's. Gregory idolized his older brother, often wearing Nick's old lacrosse jerseys and following him around the neighborhood when they were younger. He had John's sharp wit and Tamara's easy smile. Benjamin, the baby of the family, was born November 3, 1997. At 11 years old, he was the artist of the family. His drawings covered the refrigerator, and Tamara had framed several of his watercolors for the living room. He just started playing trumpet in the middle school band and had a natural ear for music that his instructor called remarkable. Benjamin was quiet, thoughtful, and sensitive, the kind of kid who rescued injured birds and cried when they didn't survive. He still crawled into his parents' bed during thunderstorms. Their house at 12 Peachtree Court represented everything John had worked for. The 5,000-square-foot colonial sat on an acre of manicured lawn, complete with a pool, 3-car garage, and a basement John had converted into a home theater. The kitchen had been renovated just 2 years earlier, with granite countertops and professional-grade appliances. Family photos lined the hallways, vacations to Disney World, Christmas mornings in matching pajamas, the boys in their various uniforms holding trophies and medals. The Brownings were fixtures at Valley Presbyterian Church, where John served as an elder and Tamara taught Sunday school. They tithed faithfully, hosted youth group gatherings, And John led the annual church camping trip Pastor David Reynolds would later say he'd often held them up as an example of a godly family during sermons. Their faith seemed genuine, their commitment unwavering. John led family prayers every evening before dinner, and the boys knew better than to miss Sunday service. Nick was the kind of teenager who seemed good at everything. He kept a 3.8 GPA, took AP classes, played varsity lacrosse and golf, and even impressed his orchestra instructor with his cello skills. But he shined the most in Boy Scouts, earning 35 merit badges under his father's guidance and preparing an approved prayer garden project for his Eagle rank. The family stayed busy with school events, sports, church, and weekend activities, often hosting gatherings and taking yearly trips. Their holiday cards always showed a happy, close-knit family, smiling together in matching outfits. The picture of a life that seemed perfect. But perfect families, as any detective will tell you, exist only in picture frames. The first signs of trouble were subtle, the kind neighbors noticed but didn't discuss. John's voice carrying a bit too harshly across the yard during lacrosse practice in the driveway, Tamara's wine glass being refilled a few too many times at the block party. Nick's friends started noticing things during middle school. Mr. B, as they called him, wasn't like other dads. Where their fathers might ground them or take away video games, John's punishments had an edge of humiliation. He once made Nick stand in the front yard holding a sign that read, "I'm a liar," after catching him in a fib about homework. The pressure for perfection permeated every aspect of the Browning household. John checked homework every night, not just for completion, but for excellence. A score of 92% wasn't celebrated. It was scrutinized for the missing 8%. When Nick got his first B+ in 7th grade, John made him write a 3-page essay about the importance of maintaining standards. Gregory and Benjamin learned early to hide their struggles, forging Tamara's signature on tests that might disappoint their father. Alex Smith, Nick's best friend since elementary school, remembered the first time he witnessed John's temper. They were 11, playing video games in Nick's room when John burst in, furious about something Nick had forgotten to do. He grabbed Nick by the collar and shoved him against the wall, Alex would later tell investigators. Nick's feet weren't even touching the ground. Mr. B's face was purple. I was so scared I ran home. The next day, Nick acted like nothing had happened, but Alex noticed the bruise on his friend's shoulder. The Boy Scout Leadership Weekend in October 2007 became a turning point. Nick, exhausted from a particularly brutal week of tests and lacrosse practice, hadn't shown the enthusiasm John expected. His attitude was poor, his participation minimal. Other scouts noticed the tension between father and son. During the car ride home, John's anger exploded. "You're a life scout, for God's sake," he screamed, striking Nick across the face hard enough to leave a mark. Nick's friend Tyler, whose dad was driving behind them, saw Nick's head snap to the side through the rear window. Tamara's drinking had progressed from social to problematic. What started as a glass of wine with dinner became a bottle, sometimes two. She'd learned to function while intoxicated, maintaining her volunteer schedule and household duties. But the boys knew when Mom had been drinking. Her words slurred slightly, her hugs lasted too long, and she'd sometimes cry for no apparent reason. Nick told friends she was checked out, present in body but absent in spirit when John's criticism turned toward her. The financial pressure, invisible to outsiders, weighed heavily on John. The mortgage on their showpiece home stretched the family budget. Private tutors for the boys, club sports fees, and maintaining their lifestyle required John to work 70-hour weeks. He brought case files home every night, working until midnight in his study. The stress manifested in shorter tempers, harsher punishments, and an obsession with the boys' future success as validation for his sacrifices. Nick had started pushing back in small ways. He discovered alcohol in 9th grade, stealing from his parents' liquor cabinet and replacing what he took with water. He'd been caught once, and John's reaction was severe enough that Nick's friends noticed he couldn't sit comfortably for days. He created a secret social media profile where he vented about his father, calling him Hitler, and posting memes about toxic parents. The account name, Prisoner04121, referenced his house number, a detail that would later chill investigators. February 1st, 2008 started like any Friday in the Browning household. John left for work at 5:30 a.m. His usual time, Tamara made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast for the boys, black coffee for herself. Nick grabbed his lacrosse gear and backpack. Benjamin forgot his trumpet and had to run back inside. Gregory complained about an upcoming history test. They piled into Tamara's Mercedes SUV for the drive to school, NPR playing softly on the radio. At Dulaney High School, Nick attended his usual classes, AP History, Honors English, Physics, Calculus. His English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, would later recall nothing unusual about his behavior that day. He'd participated in the discussion about Hamlet, even making a joke about father-son relationships that got the class laughing. At lunch, he sat with his usual group, talking about plans for the upcoming Valentine's dance and the lacrosse season starting in March. After school, John picked Nick up at 3:15 p.m. They had a brief argument in the car about the next day's plans. John wanted Nick to accompany him to Western Maryland for a church retreat planning meeting. Nick protested. He'd made plans with friends, and besides, he had a major calculus test Monday. "Your priorities are screwed up," John said, according to Nick's later testimony. "Friends don't matter. What matters is your future, and that future goes through me." John dropped Nick off at Ryan Fingal's house in the Springdale development around 3:30 p.m. Ryan's house was the unofficial hangout spot. His parents were more relaxed. They had a finished basement with a massive TV, and Mrs. Fingal's always stocked the pantry with teenage-approved snacks. Alex Smith and Taylor Delaney were already there, practicing lacrosse passes in the front yard despite the February chill. The boys spent the afternoon in typical teenage fashion. Lacrosse until their hands went numb from the cold. Then inside for Call of Duty on the Xbox. Ryan's parents were hosting another couple for dinner, adult laughter drifting down from upstairs. Around 7 p.m., the boys called in and ordered to Giorgio's, a large pepperoni pizza, mozzarella sticks, and 4 sodas. Nick seemed normal, maybe a bit quieter than usual, but nothing that raised alarms. Around 8 p.m. while eating, Nick made a phone call. His friends didn't pay attention at first, focused on the game. But Taylor would later remember one detail. Nick specifically asked someone to leave the basement door unlocked. When questioned, Nick said he was talking to Gregory, making sure he could get in later if he came home late. It seemed reasonable at the time. They started watching movies around 9 p.m., first Smoking Aces, then Accepted. By 11:30, everyone was getting drowsy. Ryan had already gone up to his room. Taylor was sprawled on one couch, Alex on another. That's when Nick announced his plan. He'd walk home, get his car, and come back. They could cruise around, maybe hit the 24-hour Walmart, grab some energy drinks. It was stupid and reckless. Nick wouldn't turn 16 for another week, but it was exactly the kind of thing that seemed like a good idea to 15-year-old boys at midnight. Nick slipped out around 12:30 a.m. The walk from Springdale to Peachtree Court took about 20 minutes on foot. Cutting through the woods behind the elementary school, security footage from a neighbor's camera would later show him entering his street at 12:51 a.m. He went straight to the basement door, the one Gregory had left unlocked as requested. What happened over the next 5 hours would be pieced together through physical evidence, Nick's eventual confession, and careful detective work. Nick entered the basement, his footsteps silent on the carpeted stairs. His father's 9mm Glock sat on the workbench, loaded, where John always kept it despite Tamara's objections about gun safety with children in the house. Nick picked it up, checked the magazine, full, with one in the chamber. He climbed the stairs to the main floor. The house was quiet except for the television in the living room. John was still awake, sitting on the leather couch, watching what appeared to be a History Channel documentary about World War II. Nick stood in the doorway for what he'd later claim was 30 minutes, though it was likely much less. He raised the gun, lowered it, raised it again, wrestling with a decision that would define the rest of his life. At approximately 1:20 a.m., Nick Browning shot his father twice in the back of the head. The sound was deafening in the quiet house. John slumped forward, then sideways, blood immediately pooling on the expensive leather. Nick stood frozen, ears ringing, waiting for someone to come running. But old houses muffle sound, and his family slept on. The point of no return had been crossed. In his confession, Nick would say his mind went blank, operating on what he called autopilot. He climbed the stairs to the second floor. His parents' bedroom door stood slightly ajar. Tamara lay on her side of the king-sized bed, face turned toward the window. 2 shots. She never woke up. The pillow around her head turned dark with blood. Down the hall to Gregory's room, his 14-year-old brother who'd helped him by leaving the door unlocked, who'd looked up to him, who'd worn his old jerseys. Gregory was lying on his stomach, one arm hanging off the bed. 2 shots. The lacrosse posters on the wall became splattered with evidence of fratricide. Benjamin's room was last. The 11-year-old slept curled on his side, stuffed animals still on his bed despite being in middle school. His trumpet case sat in the corner, ready for Monday's band practice that would never come. 2 shots. A child's life ended before it had truly begun. With his family dead, Nick faced a choice: call for help and confess, or try to get away with murder. He chose the latter. First, he needed to stage a crime scene. He went to the back door and broke the glass from the inside, trying to make it look like forced entry. But in his inexperience, he pushed the glass outward instead of pulling it inward, a detail that would immediately alert investigators. He pulled out drawers in his mother's jewelry box, but didn't take anything. He knocked over a lamp in the living room, scattered some papers from his father's desk, but he couldn't bring himself to truly ransack the house. It went against every instinct of orderliness John had drilled into him. The staging was half-hearted, unconvincing. The murder weapon needed to disappear. Nick wrapped it in an old t-shirt from the laundry room and left through the front door. He walked down Peachtree Court to Sherwood Road, about a quarter-mile away. There, in a cluster of bushes near a storm drain, he threw the gun as far into the undergrowth as he could. His hands were shaking so badly it took 3 attempts to throw it more than a few feet. The walk back to Ryan's house was the longest of his life. Every car that passed sent his heart racing. Every shadow could be police. But Cockeysville at 3 a.m. was dead quiet. He made it back to Springdale without encountering anyone. The security system at Ryan's house logged his return at 4:18 a.m. He'd been gone nearly 4 hours. Nick slipped back inside through the sliding door Ryan had left unlocked. His friends were exactly where he'd left them, sleeping on couches in the basement. He sat in a chair, trying to calm his breathing, trying to process what he'd done. At some point, exhaustion overtook adrenaline, and he dozed off. Alex's call at 6:05 a.m. jolted him awake. "Dude, where are you?" Alex asked. Nick, thinking quickly, said he'd made it home but fallen asleep in his car, waiting for his parents to go to bed. He walked back to Ryan's house, his 3rd trip of the night, arriving as everyone was waking up. He took a shower, washing away any physical evidence, though he didn't know that gunshot residue had already bonded to his clothes. When Detective Dave arrived at the Browning house at 6:05 p.m. on February 2nd, his 30 years of homicide experience immediately told him something was off. The broken glass fell the wrong way. The staging was amateur. 4 people shot execution style suggested someone familiar with the house layout, someone who knew exactly where everyone slept. The medical examiner arrived at 7:30 p.m. Dr. Susan Chen had worked over 500 homicides, but the sight of Benjamin Browning, 11 years old with his stuffed animals, made even her pause. Time of death was estimated between midnight and 3 a.m. based on body temperature and lividity. Each victim had been shot twice with no defensive wounds, suggesting they were asleep or completely unaware of danger. Crime scene technicians processed the house methodically. They found no unknown fingerprints, no foreign DNA, no sign of an actual break-in beyond the clumsily broken door. The pattern of blood spatter indicated all victims were shot where they lay, not moved post-mortem. John's wallet contained $380 cash. Tamara's jewelry, worth thousands, remained untouched. At the police station, the boys' interviews began revealing discrepancies. Detective Dave, a master of interrogation, didn't accusingly confront Nick immediately. Instead, he let the teenager talk, noting every contradiction.
If you haven't figured out by now, something really serious has happened to the Browning family. You're 15 years old. I need you to be 100% honest. The other boys have been honest with me. You can't take up and lie. Okay?
Yes.
Actually, he did. He told me that he was going to go out, but he didn't tell me where he really was going.
Okay.
He said,
I appreciate this. I mean, this is...
he said he was going to go out. I mean, I don't know. I was kind of... He said he was going to go out, and then...
What did he tell you about that? He was going out to do what?
I don't know.
He told you something. Well,
I don't know. He said he was going to go and... he said he was going to... Like, since he got, like... he said he might go and take the car, but he ended up...
take his parents' car?
So he just told me he's going. He's going to... Might take the car. He went
Did he
there.
say where we was going to go with the car?
No.
A long time. I'm in homicide. Been here a while. Stuff's just not adding up for me right now with you, okay?
Okay.
Tell me why your dad was so pissed at you yesterday.
Wasn't mad.
All your friends are saying that your father was uncharacteristically disluted with you. Yes.
Well, I mean, I see what he wanted to see the parents around. I mean, but anyway,
What now?
he has to. When he dropped me off Fingal's house, he went to the door and made sure the parents were home.
Okay. But everybody's saying that he was ticked off. What was he mad about?
Wasn't mad.
Is there a reason they would say that?
What?
Is there a reason that they would say something like that?
He's not really nice though, I don't think.
That's not, like they said, that was uncharacteristic for him, that usually when he does see them, he's always pleasant. That's why this particular moment stood out to them.
Well, I mean, they didn't see him. There was one person, Brian Fingal saw them, so I'm not sure what they're basing their experience.
I'm just telling what they're saying.
They didn't see him except for Ryan.
Okay. So you're saying he wasn't upset?
No, and even if he was, they wouldn't have seen him. So
Okay.
it all would have come through me. So.
Alright.
But Nick, things aren't adding up here. I don't understand some things that happened here tonight.
By this point, the detectives were zeroing in on Nick because they already knew he was responsible for the murders. But what shocked and frustrated them the most was his complete lack of remorse.
I think that you killed your family. And the thing is, the more you lie, the deeper it gets. This is your family. We need to know what happened here. Look at this. There were happier times.
Nobody broke into the house last night.
Didn't kill him.
Yeah, it had to be you. Nobody else did this. You know where we found the keys for the gun locker?
Where?
You tell me. You know where they are.
We searched the house.
Yeah, you do. They're under your mattress. In your room. On the right side of the bed. You put them there.
Nobody broke into this house. You went into that house. You called and had your brother leave the door open. There's no other explanation.
Yes, you
You
did.
did. And the more you lie, the deeper it's going to get for you. You're 15 years old. You really do still have a life ahead of you. But the more you lie, the deeper it gets for you.
I mean, do you want people to look at you as a cold-blooded killer? Or somebody that just made a mistake? Nobody else did it.
Didn't kill him.
Tell me how the keys got under your mattress. Nobody broke into your house. They killed your family.
The only gun missing is a 9mm. Why? Was it your father?
Didn't kill him.
You did. You killed your family.
The interview went on with him denying everything and insisting he was innocent, even falling asleep during the interrogation. But in the end, he still confessed to what he had done that night.
You didn't plan this?
No.
Is it because you're a father?
Yeah, it was the straw. Yeah.
Was it physical?
No, it's more sort of like a blast. Probably still. I mean, it wasn't. It was. They were physical. I'm in Boy Scouts, right? And excuse me.
It's okay, man.
So there's this. I'm almost Eagle. I'm almost done.
It's life.
Right, Life Scout. And then there's this leadership weekend camp out, whatever thing, and
What was it?
this Brownsy somewhere up in Africa. But anyways, I didn't want to go. I'm almost done. Didn't need a leadership camp, so my attitude wasn't great on the trip.
You got pissed?
So he got pissed, and as we're coming home, he hits me.
Was he beating on you too, mentally, or?
It was mentally, and it's like he got me a times, and that was the.
You're at Life Scout, you're at Life Scout, for God's sakes.
And so that was sort of the beginning, the beginning of it, and it's just.
How long ago was that?
That was this fall.
Okay.
Last fall. And then
You kept it up then.
it kept going, and the little thing just seemed to always revert back to that one thing, and then, the alcohol thing happened, then they called me taking out the car.
Oh, you got caught before?
I got called before.
He threatened to keep it away from you?
Right. And
But the whole time your grades are good? Everything else is?
grades were good, and last freshman year I got a D one quarter, but then I got an A the next quarter, so I got a
You
D
made
as
it
well. So that
But he's harping on the D.
right, I got on the D, and then he did, and he did occasionally, I wouldn't call it huge physical beating, but I think
He's still uncalled for.
right, the emotional, I think, because the hit, when he hit me didn't bother, it was the constant.
Did he do it in front of your friends too?
Never the hitting, but the yelling and the, anger.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. And then for my birthday, which is a couple days away, we were supposed to take friends up to Deep Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And this last weekend, he was uptight as usual. And
Did he drink or anything? Or?
no, it was never really alcohol. It was just he's overstressed, I think.
Okay.
He works, and he gets up at 5 in the morning and comes home at 6:30.
Mm-hmm.
So then he sort of had his fill being nice and always climbs when he gets home. Takes it out, up there not almost, but most nights.
Is he doing the same to your brothers? Or just you?
Maybe, but I didn't.
No.
It didn't seem like that to me, but.
To your mother at all?
Yeah, but a little bit. But the bulk seemed to be generated towards me.
Mm-hmm.
And then Friday night, he was just mad. I don't really even know why he was mad. And then I was giving directions on how to get around Fingal's house.
Mm-hmm.
And then he
Lost it?
blows out or something. It didn't hit me. He just gets really angry. We didn't even get lost. He went 2 feet past a turn and just had to make a tight turn.
Come back.
And then you have to put the car in reverse. He got really angry. And then I went back to get the car, and I saw him sitting on the couch. The TV was on. And the gun was out on the workshop bench.
Mm-hmm. What happened?
I walked up. I sat there for a half hour.
He was sleeping.
Yeah, standing over him. And then I went between putting the gun up to his head and pulling it back down and up.
Do you have a pillow up too? Or?
No, just the gun. The gun was I'm not sure if I meant to pull the trigger or if it
Just went off.
it just, and then once that happened, I freaked out, and I thought, it'd all come down, but I don't even know if they woke up or whatever, but so I sat on the couch and I couldn't, I couldn't just walk away from that. And then I shot my mom. And then,
She's still sleeping.
yeah, I waited for a little bit, then I think she went back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then I shot her. And I shot her.
Why the brothers, man?
I thought no one was there to say anything that my story would go because I was the only one. Just got scared.
The recovery of the murder weapon exactly where Nick described it sealed his fate. Ballistics matched all 8 bullets to John's Glock. Nick's DNA was on the grip, the trigger, the magazine. There was no question of guilt, only of degree. Would this be first-degree murder with life without parole, or would the abuse allegations mitigate the sentence? Baltimore County State's Attorney Scott Schellenberger personally took the case. In a press conference, he called it one of the most heinous crimes in Maryland history and announced he would seek the maximum penalty, but behind closed doors, the reality was more complex. Nick was 15, had no prior record, and there was substantial evidence of abuse. A trial would traumatize the extended family and might result in a hung jury sympathetic to an abused teenager. The defense team, led by public defender Jose Molina, built their case around abuse and diminished capacity. They gathered statements from teachers, coaches, and friends who'd witnessed John's harsh treatment. A psychologist evaluated Nick and diagnosed him with complex PTSD from years of abuse. Brain scans showed patterns consistent with chronic stress and trauma. But the prosecution had powerful counter-arguments. Nick had planned the murders, asking Gregory to leave the door open hours in advance. He'd attempted to cover up the crime. Most damningly, he'd killed his innocent brothers, one just 11 years old. Whatever abuse Nick had suffered, Gregory and Benjamin were victims too, not perpetrators. After months of legal maneuvering, a plea deal was reached. On January 23, 2009, Nick pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. In exchange, prosecutors agreed not to seek life without parole. Judge Thomas Bollinger, known for harsh sentences, had the final say. The sentencing hearing was packed. John's father, a retired military officer, stood ramrod straight as he asked for mercy. "We've lost 4 family members," he said, voice breaking. "Please don't make us lose a 5th. Tamara's sister gave a victim impact statement that left the courtroom in tears, describing Benjamin's last birthday party, how he'd wanted a Harry Potter cake and spent the day wearing a wizard hat. Nick himself spoke, his voice barely audible. "I know sorry isn't enough. I know nothing I say can bring them back. I think about Gregory and Benjamin every single day. They were innocent. They were my brothers, and I failed them in the worst possible way. I don't ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just want people to know that I'm not a monster. I'm someone who did a monstrous thing." Judge Bollinger's sentence was severe but not the maximum. 4 life terms, 2 to be served consecutively. With the possibility of parole after 23 years, Nick would be 38 before he could even be considered for release. The judge noted that while abuse may have been a factor, it could never justify quadruple homicide, especially of children. Nick was transferred to North Branch Correctional Institution, Maryland's Supermax prison. At 15, he was one of the youngest inmates in an adult facility. Prison records show he was placed in protective custody for the first 2 years for his own safety. He completed his GED within 6 months and enrolled in college correspondence courses, earning an associate's degree in psychology. In interviews from prison, Nick has expressed deep remorse, particularly for his brother's deaths. "I replay that night constantly," he said in 2018. "If I could go back, I'd call someone for help. I'd run away. I'd do anything except what I did. Gregory and Benjamin had their whole lives ahead of them. I stole that. The Browning house stood empty for 2 years before selling at a significant loss. No one wanted to live where 4 people had been murdered. It was eventually purchased by a developer who tore it down and built 2 smaller homes on the lot. The Peachtree Court neighbors rarely speak of that night, though some still leave flowers on February 2nd at a memorial tree planted in a nearby park. Dulaney High School retired Nick's lacrosse number, but created the Gregory and Benjamin Browning Memorial Scholarship for students interested in arts and athletics. Valley Presbyterian Church, where the Brownings had worshiped, held a special service on the first anniversary, focusing on forgiveness and healing. Pastor Reynolds admitted he'd missed signs of trouble, vowing to be more vigilant about family dynamics in his congregation. The case sparked discussions about suburban domestic abuse, the pressure placed on children in affluent families, and the warning signs of family violence. Maryland passed Gregory and Benjamin's Law in 2010, requiring schools to provide training on recognizing signs of child abuse, even in seemingly successful families. As of 2024, Nick Browning remains incarcerated. His parole hearing is scheduled for 2031. The parole board will consider his behavior in prison, psychological evaluations, and the nature of his crimes. Given that he murdered 4 family members, including 2 children, parole is far from guaranteed. Letters both supporting and opposing his eventual release have already been filed with the board. The Browning family murders serve as a tragic reminder that family violence knows no socioeconomic boundaries. Behind the perfect Christmas cards and honor roll certificates, a darkness was growing that would ultimately destroy 5 lives. The 4 who died that night, and the one who pulled the trigger. In the affluent suburbs of Cockeysville, where property values have recovered but memories remain, the Browning case stands as a cautionary tale about the price of perfection and the catastrophic consequences when the pressure becomes too much to bear. Nicholas Wayne Browning, Maryland Department of Corrections. Inmate number 347921 will be 38 years old when he first becomes eligible for parole. Whether he'll ever walk free remains to be seen. Unfortunately, cases where children have killed their own family are not as rare as they might seem. In fact, the next case we'll look at, the Broken Arrow murders, happened under very similar circumstances.
Broken Arrow 911. Broken Arrow 911. Hello?
For most people, the safest place they could ever be is their home. And yet, for the Beaver family of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, their home became a torture cell and execution chamber. Their screams were heard from around the neighborhood, and police only found out because one of the victims called 911 for help. The caller is clearly a child, and he's just one of many children that died that day in a brutal act of violence. No guns were used during the assault. The assailants preferred a much more intimate method of murder, so they used knives to claim the 5 lives that were lost that day. This is the story of the Beaver family, of the day half of its members were slaughtered like animals, and how a culture of glorifying violence contributed to their horrifying end. We're going to unpack how the perpetrators took inspiration from some of the most tragic mass killings in America and aspired to go further than any murderer had gone before. David and April Beaver weren't exactly the most normal people. In fact, there was a lot about their life that many might find strange. According to the Broken Arrow community, nothing really stood out about the Beavers, but that's not because they were an everyday family. They were more like ghosts, seldom heard from and even more rarely seen. They interact with their neighbors only when necessary and chose to homeschool each of their 7 children. Their entire relationship was strikingly unusual. When they met in 1987, David was 24 years old and April was only 15 years old. The age gap didn't really get in the way of their relationship, though. They quickly settled down, and in the mid-90s, they got to work starting the big family they'd always wanted. The first child to come was Robert in 1996, followed by Michael in 1998. They became the older brothers to Crystal, Daniel, Victoria, and the baby Autumn, who was just about 2 years old at the time of the incident in 2015. It's possible that the Beavers started such a large family because they didn't want anything to do with the outside world. Their kids were forbidden from talking to anyone else in the neighborhood, and they spent almost all of their time at home. Their seclusion was so complete that some neighbors only found out the Beavers' family name after the incident took place. But even though the Beavers were uniquely antisocial, they weren't exactly backwards. David was a tech consultant for HP Enterprise Services, and while April was a stay-at-home mom, she regularly used Reddit under the username AOKMom. Her posting history shows how deeply she loved her children, how she thought they were perfect, and that she wouldn't trade them for the world. She also spoke about wanting to live near the mountains or the ocean, and that her home state of Oklahoma didn't have either of those things. Most importantly, April talked about how she wanted her children to be tech-savvy. She wanted them to learn about computers and potentially become web designers and coders someday. It's safe to say that the Beavers didn't restrict their kids from the ever-growing inflow of 21st century tech. But as it turns out, this molded their impressionable minds in unexpectedly dark ways. Since he wasn't allowed to go out much or make friends with kids in the neighborhood, Robert did what any kid growing up in the 21st century did: found a community online. Or, more accurately, he tried to find an online community. What he wanted more than anything else was to be famous. So he created a YouTube account in 2013, hoping to make it big.
Salute. Hey everyone, it's me, Cult Empire. In case you didn't know, you found me by accident, or you're expecting someone else. Why would you do that? Anyway, this is the second first ever update, which I think is a major improvement. I tried a news report theme last time, that's not very vloggy, is it? So I'm being a little more chillinated, writing stuff, scripting. I'm going to make my first skit soon. I can't show you a sneak preview or it would ruin it. It'll be like a minute long. It's going to be some good stuff. I think it's going to be hilarious.
On this YouTube channel, Robert talked about Minecraft, his opinions on society, and his plans to make more content in the future. Notably, the last video uploaded to this channel features his little brother Michael, with whom Robert had a special bond. They spent a lot of time together, much of it on the internet where they'd go through videos and developed an obsession of sorts with spree killings and mass murders like the Columbine Massacre and the Aurora Theater shooting. Robert would later say that his parents had extreme beliefs, which, if true, might have inspired him to idolize killers. According to him, his parents were full of hatred and couldn't wait for a biblical apocalypse so that they could get retribution for everything they despised in the world. It's possible that David and April were antisocial, but Robert and Michael certainly were. Neighbors reported that they tended to behave strangely. In one incident, Michael was found staring blankly at the people next door, and he wouldn't respond when called out to. Clearly, something terrible was going on underneath the surface, and there's a chance that David made it even worse. It's been alleged that he was both physically and verbally abusive to his children, though the extent of this hasn't been verified. We do know that one of the children confirmed that David had a violent streak, which seemed to suggest that Robert and Michael potentially learned a lot from their father in that regard. But at the same time, any abuse that took place didn't explain why Robert and Michael became so obsessed with brutal violence. Regardless of the why, the two brothers soon started fantasizing about committing acts of violence. They fantasized about shooting up schools, murdering people in their own homes, and going on killing rampages across their town. According to Robert, these fantasies were just a way for him to express his internal rage. They weren't meant to be taken seriously, and they definitely weren't blueprints for what he wanted to do in real life. But as we will soon reveal, these murderous ideations weren't just flights of fancy. Before too long, they became too intense for Robert to hold in. In 2014, Robert got a job at a religious call center. His parents, both of whom were very religious themselves, were overjoyed that their son was taking such an interest in their faith. What they didn't know was that the whole point of the job was to collect funds that would help Robert act out his violent fantasies. Michael, who had always looked up to his older brother, was involved from the very beginning. They wanted to do something big, something that would be put in the history books. They wanted to make the shooters at Columbine and Sandy Hook seem like rookies in comparison. Basically, they wanted to kill as many people as possible, and they eventually settled on 50 people. However, they couldn't just go out and start murdering random citizens. They needed to practice first, so that their killing spree would live up to all they wanted it to be. They also needed weapons and ammunition, so they started gathering it the first chance they got. By the summer of 2015, Robert and Michael had Kevlar vests, helmets, guns, and bullets. Robert had saved every single penny he could from the call center job, and it paid for the personal armory that could unleash hell on Broken Arrow in the blink of an eye.
Where were you going to go? I mean, where was going to be your mass plan to get the most people, the most bang for your buck?
We're just heading generally towards Washington State. We're going to do it statewide.
Did you guys have, like, were you gonna go, I mean, who else were you gonna kill? Just whoever you ran into?
Yeah, pretty much. He said 5 at a time, like gas stations, restaurants.
Okay, and then just keep going.
Yep.
The final piece of their murderous puzzle was a consignment of 3,000 rounds of ammunition. It was due to arrive on July 23rd, but there was a problem. Their parents would be understandably concerned if they saw their sons receiving thousands of bullets. This was something Robert and Michael wouldn't tolerate. And so, the murder of the Beaver family was planned out for 2 reasons. Firstly, Robert and Michael needed to practice their craft before heading out on their real spree, and secondly, they had to make sure their parents were dead before the bullets arrived. The stage was set, and Robert and Michael were ready to put their plan into action. By the way, I post true crime and new cases here every day, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. It helps a lot. The perpetrators got ready to wipe out their family on July 22nd, 2015. Their sister, Crystal, had seen them wearing Kevlar vests and other types of body armor previously, and had told their mother about their weird behavior. However, April just told their daughter that boys will be boys, probably assuming that her sons were messing around. At around 11 p.m. on the night of the incident, Crystal got another sight of her brothers wearing tactical gear when she went to their bedroom. She was likely going to ask them to wash the dishes or perform some other chore before they went to bed. But she ended up walking in on them right as they were about to execute their plan. When Michael saw her, he asked Robert if they should go ahead with the plan now. Robert said yes, and the pair immediately started stabbing and slashing at their sister with large knives. They went so far as to slit Crystal's throat, but the 13-year-old girl's will to live was too great. Since they thought she was already dead, she slowly started crawling towards the front door. As she inched to freedom, she heard her mother screaming. Robert and Michael had started attacking their parents. David suffered 28 stab wounds to the neck, torso, head, and face. It was a brutal, unrelenting assault, the kind you'd expect from a wild animal, not a human being. However, what the perpetrators did to their mother was even more gruesome. April was stabbed nearly 50 times all across her body, but that's not how she died. A medical examiner later reported that she'd been killed by blunt force trauma to the head. This means that the homicidal brothers either stabbed her relentlessly before bashing her head in, or their hatred for her was so potent that they ravaged her corpse with their knives. By this point, Robert had noticed that Crystal had escaped. Her wounds were so severe that she'd collapsed outside, so Robert headed out and dragged her back in. This left a trail of blood on the driveway, something that would prove crucial later on.
Who else was in the bathroom?
I think Victoria might have been in there. About
Victoria?
Yeah, my 4-year-old sister.
4-year-old, okay.
There's no way to know exactly what happened next, but reports confirm that 7-year-old Christopher and 4-year-old Victoria were locked in the bathroom for their safety. Since they were far too young to be able to think of a plan like this, it's possible that their older brother Daniel told them to go in and lock the door behind them. He knew he had to do something. anything to save his family. He didn't have time to think about why his brothers were slaughtering everyone he loved. Daniel headed to a phone as Robert dragged Crystal back into the house. Michael headed to the bathroom and knocked, asking the kids to open the door. There's a chance that Daniel had told him not to open the door for anyone, and the children did as their older brother and protector said. But Michael was the older brother too, and he was laser focused on his desire to kill everyone in the house except Robert. Michael started pretending that Robert was attacking him and begged the kids to open the bathroom door. Eventually, the innocent children, probably confused and disoriented by all the chaos, opened the door. They were killed instantly, with Christopher getting stabbed 21 times and Victoria receiving 23 stab wounds. While all of this was happening, April spoke her final words, shouting at Daniel to call 911. The 12-year-old hid himself in a bedroom and called the police. And despite how shaken he was able to quickly and efficiently describe the situation to the operator.
Hello? Hi, where are you at?
Beaver, Oklahoma 7411.
What address?
709 Magnolia Court.
Okay. Are you the only one there?
No, my brother's attacking my family.
Your dad is attacking your family?
No, my brother. He has an idea stealing me. Oh, millions of people die.
Okay, who's attacking your family?
What?
Who's attacking your family?
Yes.
Who is it? Do they?
I'll call them.
The call ends with what sounds like pleading from Daniel. It's possible that he was pleading with Michael as he raised the knife over his head. The pleas went unanswered, and Daniel suffered 21 stab wounds before he died. Overall, the Beaver family was stabbed 150 times. The sheer physical exertion of the attack would have left Robert and Michael feeling utterly exhausted. That's when they heard the sounds of police sirens in the distance. Even though Daniel hadn't been able to provide details during the 911 call, the operator had heard enough to know that something was terribly wrong. She dispatched police officers to the scene, and when they arrived, they saw the blood that Crystal had left on the porch. They knocked on the door. Crystal, who was miraculously still alive, was able to weakly call out to the officers. They immediately broke down the door and headed inside, finding Crystal bleeding on the floor. It didn't take long for them to find the rest of the victims, along with 2-year-old Autumn, who'd somehow been spared. However, her survival wasn't the result of mercy from her brothers. Later reports revealed they intended to behead her, saving her as the last course in their grotesque homicidal buffet. But the police arrived before they could see their plan through. The 2 teen culprits fled out the back door and tried to hide in the woods behind the family home. More police arrived, and a canine unit was dispatched. The dogs caught the scent of the killers fairly quickly, and Robert and Michael were found hiding in a bush. Michael was quivering and afraid, but Robert was carrying a knife. Pictures taken of the culprits before they were booked show Michael looking absolutely miserable, but Robert has a smug smile on his face, as if this is what he'd wanted all along. Crystal was taken to the hospital where she had to undergo surgery while her brothers were taken to the police station. When he was interrogated, Robert apparently showed no signs of remorse. His interview has never been released to the public, but we do know that he talked about how he wanted to be famous and that was the sole motive behind the mass murder. Both brothers were charged with 5 counts of murder in the first degree, along with an additional count of assault with intent to kill. On July 6, 2016, while awaiting trial in custody, Robert tried to commit suicide by tying his bedsheet into a noose. Perhaps he'd deluded himself into thinking this was a romantic end to his supposedly heroic quest. As it turned out, the noose was ineffective, and Robert didn't experience any injuries from the attempt. He was placed on suicide watch, and the 2 brothers attended their separate trials. Robert had initially pleaded not guilty to the charges. After the suicide attempt, he changed his plea to guilty and was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. As for Michael, the judge determined that he should be tried as an adult. He initially tried to plead insanity, but he was eventually convicted on all counts as well, and received a sentence of 5 consecutive life terms plus 28 years. The brothers were jailed in separate facilities. Robert was sent to Joseph Harp Correctional Center, whereas Michael was sent to Lexington Correctional Center. The younger culprit showed a deteriorating state of mind, with inmates reporting that he made grotesque, violent drawings in crayon, possibly to make him seem tougher than he was. While in jail, Robert was diagnosed with a number of mental illnesses, many involving psychosis. Prison doctors theorized that he had major depressive disorder, borderline personality disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. They also prescribed him medication for schizophrenia. Based on how Robert has behaved in jail, all that medical attention doesn't seem to have had much of an effect. In 2019, he tried attacking prison staff with a makeshift shiv, indicating that his violent impulses haven't gone away. Crystal and Autumn, the sole survivors of the massacre, were eventually adopted by the same family. This was done to ensure they could stay together, something that might help them overcome the immense tragedy their brothers had put them through. As for the Beaver family home, it fell into a state of disrepair as it sat vacant for years. No one wanted to buy a house where something so gruesome had occurred. It became a popular spot for ghost hunters and other fans of the macabre until it was destroyed in a fire on March 18, 2017. Just weeks after the city council made plans to buy it and demolish it. The cause of the fire remains unknown, but it's possible that someone wanted to rid Broken Arrow of this tragic reminder. 2 years later, Reflection Park was opened to honor the memory of the Beaver family. The park contains a path that goes through a seemingly innocuous patch of grass, where the scene of the massacre once stood. It's highly likely that Crystal and Autumn changed their names to protect their privacy. All remnants of the Beaver family, including their home, are now gone. So, what do you think of this case? Did Michael deserve to be tried as an adult, considering Robert was the mastermind? Or was he just as complicit in the murders? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you like the way we create these videos and you want to help bring more cases like this to light, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thank you once again for watching.